On this episode, we are joined by an African feminist leader and a movement strategist whose work has shaped community-led advocacy across the continent. She is a Kenyan feminist, grant-making advisor, and social justice leader with over 15 years of experience supporting grassroots movements, particularly those led by women and marginalized communities across the continent. She is the founder and former executive director of the African Sex Workers Alliance. Today, she works with regional and global organizations as a consultant and knowledge strategist supporting feminist and human rights movements to build stronger governance systems, sustainable partnerships, and more equitable models of philanthropy. Her work bridges lived experience, movement leadership, and global advocacy, amplifying African voices in conversations about gender justice, human rights, and community-led development. Please join me in welcoming my mother, Daughtie Ogutu. Hi.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm fine.
This is a very interesting bit where we're having this talk. It should be interesting. Now, let's just dive right into it. In as much as I know half of this story, but let's get the Inspire audience to know more about you and how you became the amazing woman that you are today. So, tell us about your early life and the experience that shaped the person you are today.
Wow. So that, like, you are 40 years of my life. You want that? My early life, I had a normal childhood. I am a middle child. I say that very often. I'm a middle child from a family of 4, and I had a good life as a baby girl, up until I was 13, and my life was uprooted with the sudden loss of my father. And then 6 months later, my mother. I usually say that my mom died of a broken heart because she couldn't fathom just living
Without your dad.
Without the love of her life. So that was a rude shock for us, all of us as siblings. My siblings, we were all teenagers. The first 2 are Irish twins, so literally one after the other. And then I'm born 2 years after my sister. And then the last one is 8 years younger than me. So there's a bit of a gap there. So he was literally a baby. He was like 7 years old, and the rest of us were teenagers. And that shook us to the core because our parents really protected us, loved us, provided for us enormously. Back in the day, you would say we were spoiled children.
Rich kids of the days, eh?
Something like that. Like, I was born and raised in Buruburu.
The Runda of the days, the current.
Really? Yeah. And then, life went down and we ended up in Kayole from Buruburu to Kayole.
The whole 180 of your life.
And then they died.
Yeah.
So that was hard for all of us. As a teenager, psychology teaches you that is the time you form your bond, your identities, everything. Yeah. And we didn't have anywhere or anyone to form those ones with. We were split. If you come from Luo culture, you know this. Watoto are sent to different
relatives.
Yeah. So that happened to us. Yeah. And we grew up separately. So we didn't know... You would remember, of course, I know she's my sister, she's my brother, see each other when school is closed. Yeah. But we were not living under the same roof. We were not, And we also faced a lot of mistreatment from
relatives.
Yeah. So I hope this is a safe space.
Yeah, definitely. We're always open and raw at Inspire.
Yeah. And so I was sexually assaulted where I was with the relative that I was staying with.
Yes.
And I just up and left. I was like, I don't want to be here anymore. I couldn't take it anymore. I think I was about 14 or 15. And I left. Hoping to be reunited with my siblings, but that also I didn't know. I thought I was leaving the bad to. So I literally went from the frying pan into the fire. Literally, because what I then found on the other side wasn't any better, with that relative as well. Constantly being reminded that your parents were splashing money, and therefore you have to do all the donkey work. You have to do all the cleaning and you
were the house helps.
Yes. I was a bit of a rebel, just like you.
At some point in
as a teenager,
yeah.
like I really, really, really was
a rebel.
Yes, as my name suggests, Daughtie, and therefore as a kid I was known as Naughty Daughtie, and it just stuck with me with all the relatives. And I was bounced off from one relative to another because no one wanted the naughty child. Everyone wanted my elder sister, who was quiet. She's still quite quiet. Yeah, but she was more poised, more composed. She would be the flower girl at weddings because I was too rowdy to be a flower
girl.
Yeah, and it's fine. And I was a tomboy. So no one wanted me, and that's fine. And so for me, I wore that as an armor. And I was like, hey, I don't care. Even when we were getting punished as kids.
You'd never cry?
I wouldn't. My sister would be there and she would be like, no, I didn't make the mistake Daughtie did. And I was like, oh yeah, so what's the punishment? Bring it on. And that was me. So I was taken to several high schools until I couldn't. So I just dropped out of high school. And just the environment where I was living, my sister and I, it was quite harsh. I as a parent right now, for me, I wouldn't treat anyone's child the way I was treated. I would never do that. And so, and also just understanding that, trauma was being passed down onto us.
Yeah.
So we left. We left even that home in the coast. And I got married at the age of 16. Not like officially married, but
the traditional,
like
can we stay?
A dude met me, liked me. Yeah. We didn't even care that I was underage in Kilifi County. It's like the norm. Yeah. So I was living with this man. He was a famous DJ in Mombasa, and that was my life. I got pregnant. My relatives made a whole lot of noise. I was forced to have an abortion at 16. And then I was sent back to school. And I couldn't. So
you dropped out again.
And I dropped out again.
Okay.
And I just went back to the man and we continued living. Up until now, we are getting to where you are now born.
Okay, now I'll just stop you right there because that reverts back to very many other questions. Now, let's dive deep now into your career because we've now understood how your early life was shaped. Because there's some level of psychological embodiment in the careers that people choose that actually stems from how you grew up in your teenagehood.
Yeah.
So, to kick off, what inspired you to pursue work in community development and social justice?
Oh, nothing. It landed on me. I was 21. I had a child. And just the trauma that I had gone through from my early life up until that particular point. And essentially at that point, back in the day, this is 2005 when you were born, you've had a child and your life is over.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to believe that. Like, I kept on telling myself, you can't tell me that this is it. Like, this is where my life ends? Okay, so my life ends here, but there's a child that is going to grow up and I don't want this for them. So, and I would look around what I'm seeing around me and I would see we were a whole bunch of also young mothers who were engaging in, transactional or survival sex work, you know? And I was like, do I really want this? Someone came to me and told me there is an organization that is looking for volunteers, peer educators who are working, you know, in the area or the sector where I was, which is sex work. And back then, we used to call it commercial sex work. But now we just dropped the word commercial. So I went, interviewed, and I was taken. And in my first, and I was very passionate about it because I learned so many things that I did not know. For example, like the sexual harassment, the sexual abuse that I'd endured, even just prevention of pregnancy, you know, because I had already gotten pregnant at the age of 16. So like we were basically doing the ABCs of safe sex. Do you know what that means? ABC of safe sex?
Let us know.
Abstinence, be faithful, and condom use.
Oh, wow. Damn.
So you see, Gen
I think
Zs
our
don't know
audience just
that.
learned something new today. Wow.
So that is how, and this was a USID project.
Yeah.
So that is what we were promoting. So
Yeah.
we would go out in the night because that is the only time you would meet the sex workers in Mombasa. Yeah. And so as much as I lived in Mtwapa, which, you know, we all know Mtwapa.
Yeah.
But I worked in Mombasa Island. So that Sabasaba area, if you're going to Casablanca, was the area, and I was a zone coordinator. So I used to coordinate activities there, going to make sure that there are condoms in the bars. So I would, you know, have you ever seen a condom dispenser in a
toilets,
bar?
yes.
In toilets?
Yeah. So that was you.
That was me. I was that person. So you'd be assigned a certain number of bars, and then you put them. And then you go on the street and you meet your fellow sex workers and you talk to them. You ask them, okay, so obviously you're a sex worker, so you can't be faithful. Then you can practice safe condom use because, again, you can't abstain either. So that was it. So I did a whole lot of that. One time, I was going to Coast General, which is where you were born.
Yeah.
And I was doing a session with mothers in the ANC clinic. It was some HIV information dissemination. Just talking to mothers, making sure that they can get their HIV test before, you know, while they're still pregnant, or, you know, and that sort of information. And the director of the organization, where I was just a peer educator, so he found me there. And they were very strict, this man, Like I remember Mr. Kingola, he was the country director. So you had to wear either blue jeans or black jeans and the organizational T-shirt that has the logo and a badge. And you have a bag that has all the IEC materials, information materials, and your condoms there. And you would, you know, have a session. So he found me right in the middle of it. And he watched me for a while as I was doing that. And after I was done with that, he called me into his office, and I was so scared because why am I being called into the country director's office? But he was very impressed by what he had seen, because he did not, like, he had just gone for other meetings there, but he did not expect to find a young peer educator, a 22, 23-year-old doing that. And so he then came to me and said, you know what? I want to do something special for you. So I got sponsored to go for a training, a human rights training.
Now you see, because I know this story, I'll pause you right there.
Oh.
So would you say before now this trip that we're about to start to talk about, is that what pushed you towards feminism, human rights, and fellow sex workers' rights?
Yes, yes. In this training, so it was a human rights training actually that was bringing sex workers from across East Africa. So Kenya, Uganda, and Tanzania. And this meeting had been planned for Uganda, actually.
Yeah.
We were kicked out of Uganda.
Because?
by the ethics minister.
Oh, okay.
And the news was all prostitutes from Kenya,
wow.
Uganda, and Tanzania are convening
In
in
Uganda.
Kampala. So the meeting had to be moved, so I couldn't travel to Kampala.
Uganda.
Because I remember I went and I got my temporary passport. Do you know what a temporary passport is?
There were temporary passports.
It's a piece of paper.
Oh wow. Wait, you needed passports to go to Uganda?
Yes, you couldn't go
Do we
with
still
your
need
ID.
passports to go to Uganda nowadays?
No, you can
You
just
can go with your ID. Yeah.
Yes.
So that's why I'm surprised.
Yeah, so I was a bit disappointed because I was so looking forward on getting onto a plane. It wasn't my first time on a plane.
But it's a long time.
But it was a long time coming, and I really felt like I had earned it. So and I was very proud of myself. And so the meeting was shifted to Mombasa, just like right next door.
Next door.
But it turned out to be such a powerful meeting because I remember meeting this woman, Atango Chisone, and she's a lawyer, and she spoke. And basically, she was just taking us through the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. So, see, I missed high school, so I don't know this document. I missed high school, so I don't know a lot of things about history. And I was like, wow. My eyes, like, I felt like were opened. And I met fellow feminist leaders from Uganda, and how they were speaking and just learning the charter of the feminist principles. And I was like, you know what? I'm in the right space. And you see how you're thinking that you're the only sex worker who's going through XYZ until you hear another one's story. And you're like, hold up, it's across border. You know, remember, my mind is only thinking Mombasa, Mtwapa, and I'm only thinking this sex work thing is only happening here because this is where the Wazungu are. But no, now you hear it from sex workers in Tanzania and you hear it from sex workers in Uganda. And I'm like, wow.
It's not just me.
It
not just
wasn't
us.
just me.
Yeah.
So this space, and I met the late David Kato. David Kato is a slain gay activist from Uganda. He was killed, I think, about 3 years after I met him.
Okay.
And I met David Kato.
May his soul rest in peace.
In that meeting, because they were the people training us. And I met Kasha Jacqueline, also a very powerful LBQ activist from Uganda. And I was just so blown away. So that experience for me, like, cemented for me that, you know what, I want to do this. I want to pursue feminism, human rights. I didn't even know what it was. Even because I think even at that particular time, I wasn't even clear about what career path I want to take, because remember, it fell
on your lap.
It fell on my lap. But this story is quite interesting because I think maybe a year after a very successful workshop that we had in Mombasa, a year after, the same team came again, Akina Mama wa Africa. I remember them quite clearly. And I just met amazing women. And these women shaped who I am today. Like, they are women who walked a particular journey with me, who listened to my story and reminded me, first of all, I'm not a victim. So whenever I'm telling my story, I don't tell it from a victim point of view. I tell it from a point of power.
Yeah.
And I remember in 2007, 2008, my very good friend Zawadi Nyongo took on a path of writing a story of sex workers in Africa in a book called When I Dare to Be Powerful. And that was a story about resilience and power, because all of us sex workers from East Africa, it's a compilation of 6 stories of sex workers from East Africa. And we are telling what that story was, what our journey is, but not from a point of being victims, but from a point of power and resilience.
Yeah.
Because if our stories are so different, but if you see how all of us emerged up until today, like these women are powerful sex worker activists,
Activist.
feminists in this world. Daisy, McLean, Felista, Penina, these are women whose stories are very powerful when you listen to. And we sat there and we were like, no, we're going to form a sex work. There's a women's movement, which some women don't want sex workers in this space. Okay, that's fine. And so we needed to find our own voices.
In your own space.
And our own space.
Yeah.
And this collective of ours, somehow, small girls, that's what I want to call us, because I was barely 25 when we were founding the African Sex Workers Movement. We had an exchange program. I went to South Africa. Bless you. I went to South Africa. I went to Ethiopia, just still telling this story. But not from that point, because we started realizing that as we are doing this peer education work around the ABCs, but there is violence, there is stigma, there's discrimination, there's extortion that's happening because sex workers are criminalized. And we were like, why? So I find myself there now. I'm doing law because now you need to understand legal frameworks and how that operates.
Yeah.
So that's how I start. Then I get a paralegal training, and you start understanding basic fundamental basics about law.
Yeah.
And so I started doing that together with social work and community development at Mombasa Polytechnic. It was still just a polytechnic. It wasn't a university.
Oh, now it's a university.
Yes, now all polytechnics are universities. But before they were not.
Okay.
So it was just like a very basic course, 18 months, sponsored still by ICRH. But look what came out of it. It's an entire movement, which is 20 years old. Yeah.
Now, you served as the executive director of ASWA.
Wow.
And you were in this space for over 15 years of experience in the feminist movement, grant making. Could you just briefly tell us what lessons did you learn in your journey in this movement? And what lessons would you pass on to the next generation that's taking over from you?
I'll tell you immediately, the lessons I've already passed on. And I'll circle back into that in my response. First of all is when we were forming ASWA, it was a project, the Africa Sex Worker Alliance. It was just a project. We wanted to learn from each other. We wanted to see how we can build each other, support each other. There was a research that took place, which is what took me. You see, now I've become a researcher.
You've grown from a peer educator.
From a peer educator. Now I'm a researcher. Because now we are doing research, wanting to understand the differences and similarities in terms of the sex work industry in Kenya. So now I've gone to South Africa to learn. And the South African came to Kenya to learn. And you met her, my very good friend, Koli. And so she came to learn. And we were doing all these exchange programs. But at the end, you have to write a report. But I didn't finish high school.
No experience in doing.
I didn't finish high school. I didn't even go to college. So now, and I'm given a laptop. I remember it was a Dell. Studio HP. Boom, shika. I don't even know how to operate the thing. And there we were, struggling, really. And we started realizing, okay, there is this element around poverty. If you look at why an individual, and I'm using the word individual very deliberately because I don't want you to think that people in sex work are just women. So it can be a man or it could be a gender diverse person. And so this research showed us how we need to look at capacity in terms of skills development. this is where you get to tricky waters, because then we met crusaders who were saying, oh, yes, we have a sewing machine we can give you so that you can stop selling sex.
Oh.
Or we can teach you how to burn to make charcoal.
Oh, they're giving you alternatives.
Exactly.
Okay.
Or like, you can be a mama mboga. Please, don't get me wrong. I am not in any way trying to degrade any of those economic empowerment industries. However, one of the things that kept on recurring as we are doing this and learning as we are moving along, and even if you ask me myself, because the reason why I entered sex work is not why I stayed in sex work. I left eventually, but
And why?
over
What
the
was
number,
the reason?
the reasons kept on changing over the number of years. Remember, I didn't have you then when I started, but it was for survival. I simply did not have a roof over my head. So the man that was there, for me, that was a transaction. I was never in love. There was no, this thing that I called marriage, it was for convenience because I needed a roof over my head. Okay.
So what was the reason of staying?
And even, so even after having you, and the you story is a different story as to how I ended up being a single parent. Now, I'm a single parent and I need to provide for my child. So I stayed. The first thing I did in 2009 that was very shocking is just going on media and say, my name is Daughtie and I'm a sex worker. No one had ever done it. No one.
And I saw the papers. It created buzz around the country.
They even had to organize security for us to come back in the country unknown, because the media in South Africa was just blowing up. South Africa had already done it, but this is a Kenyan
doing it
and
in
I'm
South
doing
Africa.
it in South Africa.
Yeah.
One thing I need to make clear is that as an adult, I don't know how to explain it because my experience is different from another
person's experience.
So even as I sit here on Inspire, I don't purport to say that because that was my experience, it's going to be yours. Sex workers get raped, killed, tortured.
Yeah.
And if I go back into one of the things that made me want to focus on the human rights aspect for sex worker rights is because I witnessed or like I knew of a sex worker who was murdered by a client. She's a sex worker from Mtwapa. And the way we were telling the story, it was being told like gossip.
But not with the intensity and the magnitude that
and
it
it
should
didn't
have.
sit well with me.
Yeah.
And the more I kept on telling this story, it disturbed me. And so I documented this story and I collected evidence about this story. And to the point that it even got to international authorities from the German embassy to follow up on it, to actually take action against the perpetrator of this.
It was a German?
Yes.
Okay.
This is the point that I realized how powerful the work I was doing. Because it wasn't just about, oh, I'm a sex worker and sleeping around and earning money and that's it. Yeah. For me to sit in a platform and I still identify as a sex worker, I'm just not active. Yeah. But for me, that is a political statement that needs to be constantly be told. Especially in this day and time where we are dealing with anti-rights movements who are well organized, well funded, mostly by Christian fundamentalists, who have decided that women don't have a voice or agency to decide what they want to do with their bodies.
Yeah.
So when the sex worker movement is screaming, decriminalize sex work, it's not about it being open season for people to do, you know?
Yes.
Yeah. But it's about looking at the human aspect of the person, of the individual who's engaged in the industry. Criminalization harms sex workers. By labeling them as criminals, it means, do you remember the story about Onyancha? Do you know Onyancha? Hey, we had a Kenyan serial killer.
Oh, really?
You don't know?
When was this?
Back in, I need to remember, But it's the early 2000s. And
Okay.
he confessed to saying that, yes, he was killing sex workers.
Okay.
But it's like Jack the Ripper. Jack the Ripper used to kill sex workers.
Oh, okay.
And for me, and you know this about myself, I love watching murder mysteries because my question is, what is it about the man's brain that makes it okay for you to want to kill another woman?
Yeah.
Because it goes beyond them just being a sex worker.
Yeah.
It spills over.
Yeah.
But sex workers are such a marginalized community amongst the community of women, marginalized, ostracized, discriminated upon, othered. For the longest time, I was an other. Up until I took power and I said I'm not a victim and I held my voice to say my name is Daughtie Ogutu and I am a sex worker, no one can take that ever away from me.
So, we've talked a lot around what happened, how you built the movement, how you entered into the movement, and why the movement was built and why it exists till today.
Yeah.
What I'd like us to discuss and for the audience to understand is you being in this movement, you learned a lot, you grew a lot, considering you did drop out of high school, but you held high-level ranking positions in the movement, such as the executive director, regional coordinator, and very many other positions as you've moved along your career. Briefly, we can just get to understand how that came to be, how you were able to rise the ranks in the movement, even not only just in the sex worker movement. You've worked with the global networks of people living with HIV. You've worked with very many other organizations in high-ranking positions. So we can just have a brief overview of how that happened and how that came to be. And we can also just dive in to understand what lessons you learned along the way and how you were able to build strong relationships and coalitions and partnerships within these organizations to be able to, have relationships with donors, funders to fund the organization. Yeah.
Wow, that's a heavily packed one.
Yeah.
One thing that helped me grow career-wise was the level of authenticity. I remember being told that, Daughtie, you are just a breath of fresh air when you walk into the room.
Wow.
Or like I am the destabilizer. Because I would be in a meeting, it's a UN meeting, we're talking about HIV prevention, and someone would suggest something so ridiculous such as, oh yeah, let's find somewhere where we can just put all the sex workers in like one place and treat them there. And I'm like, does that even sound okay to you? What I brought into rooms and what I feel like people from marginalized communities such as sex workers bring into a room is a lived reality experience that literally strips you of your prejudice. Because we all come from a point of prejudice. You look at someone and you judge the person. And you need to strip yourself so bare to ask yourself, beyond my title. So introduce yourself without saying, I am Sean Dalma, CEO. So who are you?
Who are you beyond your title?
Who are you beyond that? And that is the level of authenticity. And it's also just, it comes from decades of marginalization that communities that are criminalized have not been able to experience. If you go back in the 1980s, the gay community, do you know that AIDS used to be called greed? It was a gay disease, right? And then look at how black people were treated. I learned just last month, Black History Month, that there were 12 million ships that left Africa to go to the Americas. Do you know 12 million?
Ships.
12 million ships. Do you know how many?
many people those are.
How many people were there? Do you know how many people died in between leaving Africa to get to the
Get
Americas?
to the US.
And the treatment that black people got. Yeah? So when you start looking at things from that level, you want to start understanding where does stigma and discrimination come from? Yeah? Because also if you look at, and this history is not told very well for the African continent, unfortunately. Because what we revert back to is what happened in the US.
Not what happened back home.
But who can tell the story about African sex workers? Because you cannot tell me that it did not exist up until colonialization. No, it was there.
Yeah.
It is the oldest profession. So they say.
Oh, really?
Aki Gen Zs. Yes. If you actually even just Google it right now, it says prostitution is the oldest profession.
Wow.
It is. It
Okay.
is. Yeah. Like, for how long have people been exchanging sex or sexual favors? Money, favors, goods, services, whatever.
Yeah.
Whatever. And we have a very controversial saying in the sex worker movement. Everyone is a sex worker. All of us are sex workers here. You're either on prepaid, postpaid, or contract.
Contract is marriage?
No. Terms and conditions we can explain off camera.
Okay.
Yeah. But so your question around how did I rise?
Yes.
Is because the story of sex workers was being told by researchers who came to research on our bodies because of family planning. And I don't know how many sex workers died as a result of being guinea pigs and lab rats.
Yeah.
HIV vaccines and treatment, initial HIV treatment, the ARV that people are taking, was being tested on sex workers on this continent. Do you know how many sex workers died from being guinea pigs? And therefore, the story of African sex workers had to be told by African sex workers, not some researcher who is going to come and start writing about how people came from poverty.
Yeah.
We live in the 21st century now, and you know that someone can actually decide and choose that this is what I want to do as a profession. You don't have to come from a poverty. I didn't come from a poverty background, as we have learned today. Yeah. And so that is what allowed ASWA to grow. And as ASWA was growing, I grew as well as an individual. One of the things that I was able to do is what you've said, is build those coalitions. Wanting to work with other organizations and partner with other like-minded organizations. So even with the feminist movements, because as you can see, they played a big role in shaping who I was as a person, as a leader. Remember, now I am a leader. And therefore, I carried a lot of mentors along with me from the feminist movement. But also just wanting to work with people within the HIV movement. Again, a lot of the conversation around sex work would always come in through an HIV entry point and not a human rights aspect. So we will get you there, but let's start with the HIV conversation.
Okay.
Yeah. So those coalitions helped us.
Yeah.
And as we did that, and as you're building coalitions and you build credibility, then I started learning around systems. Because for organizations to actually last, you need systems in place. And that's what I was telling you, is that for me, having stepped aside from being a movement leader, I'm very confident in the structures and the systems that I left within the sex worker movement. I have a legacy within the sex worker movement because ASWA moved from a project that was working in 3 countries to 8 countries. And now it is a regional network in 33 countries across Africa. And for me, I go to countries, I would walk in Nigeria and people, they would go like, Mama, and I'm so tiny, but they remember me as a movement leader. And that happens for me in several countries across Africa. And I feel like for me, within this particular movement, my legacy will be there. I'm very happy that even after I stepped down from ASWA in 2019, it's 6 years down the line, but the systems, the structures, even some of the employees that I hired
Are
are
still
still
there.
there and are still working. So
Yeah.
I left an institution that will continue beyond me.
Yeah.
So Daughtie might disappear, Daughtie will pass away, but ASWA will live on.
live
And that's
on.
a legacy I think that's important, and a
Yeah.
footprint that I've left in this world.
Yeah.
If we are not talking about you.
Okay. Being in the human rights space, you've of course experienced a lot of threats. Looking back when even I was growing up, we were taken to a safe house at some point. And you've worked with also frontline defenders who protect human rights defenders. How would you say and what would you advise other human rights defenders who are coming up and young people who are fighting for the rights of the other people, not just even in the sex work movement, but overall through, to take care of themselves and also make sure that they are protecting themselves and their own well-being, as much as the advocacy space is really demanding of their own security and their own lives?
I've learned over the number of years, like you've said, you've been taken to a safe house because
Yeah.
of my work. and it gets really scary.
Yeah.
And at that point in time, I was on the front line, being on TV and media, taking on the former mayor of Nairobi, and doing all of that. It was really quite scary because you hear of human rights defenders who have been killed
Yeah.
in other parts of the world. And there are countries where even just speaking about human rights is not allowed. It's not permitted by the government. And then going to work for frontline defenders, for me, was an eye-opener. It told me that, you know what, beyond the activist space, that safety and security is something that is very important for individuals. And even right now, we are living in a digital age where literally everyone, I feel like everyone is a human rights defender. And we got to experience that here in Kenya with the Gen Z protest because everyone was just speaking out against the government and atrocities from this government. And you could see kidnappings, disappearances, and all those things that were happening.
Yeah.
And what I can say is that in as much as it is important, the advocacy work that we are doing is very important.
Yeah.
I have the privilege right now of taking a back seat and giving technical assistance because that's the role that I do now, considering like I am a movement founder or whatever.
Yeah.
But as a consultant, as a technical expert, I'm able to look at things from a different point of view and actually be able to understand when you're looking at safety and security is how it needs to be part of your advocacy strategy.
Yeah.
So as you're doing advocacy, as you're doing your visibility, you need to figure out how do I counter smear campaigns, counter attacks, and just make sure that we are still making sure that the information that we need to put out there still goes out there, but I am safe and my family is safe. Also on a personal level, and this I have learned the hard way, is that, you need rest.
Okay.
I remember a time when I was completely burnt out. I was so skinny.
I remember.
Skinnier than
In and
this.
out of hospital.
Yeah. And it was burnout, it was fatigue. So rest is very important as an activist.
Yeah.
I know right now I'm working with feminist organizations, making sure that they're looking at activist safety, but also well-being as a holistic kind of approach to make sure that, in as much as you're doing advocacy, you're putting information out there, but you're also being safe.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, what legacy do you hope your work to leave for the future generations?
I think I've left future generations, and I'm happy when I see the work that they are doing now. So I hope that work continues. I know we are still fighting for DCRIM. 3 days ago was International Sex Worker Rights Day.
Yeah.
And we are still hoping that at some point in my lifetime, after being one of the people that helped pass a policy with Amnesty International on
Yes.
decriminalization of sex work,
Yeah.
I hope in my lifetime that I will get to see that one.
Lovely.
Yeah.
Now, just a quick one. Could you tell us a book or a resource that deeply influenced your life?
You know this about me. I don't like books.
Yeah, you don't, but here we are.
So there is a movie called Erin Brockovich, and the actress is Julia Roberts. I watched it when I was a young girl.
Okay.
I think before my mom died, or maybe right after. And she's this single mother of 3 kids, Irish twins, all of them. And she ends up doing research on the water that was poisoning people in an area. And she won no education, no nothing. And she was just making, at first she just wanted a secretary job so that she can put food on the table for her kids.
Yeah.
It was a multi-billion-dollar lawsuit.
Oh, wow.
And they won because of the research work that she did. And I would actually advise any single mother to watch Erin Brockovich, actress Julia Roberts.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, Daughtie, right here at Inspire, all our guests answer one question before they leave, which is, what inspired you or what still inspires you?
Oh. I'd say my kids.
Oh.
No.
Yeah.
Really, honestly, I would say having you was a turning point in my life. I just had to. I had to make something out of myself.
And how would you
And
turn that and tell young mothers who are in your situation right now?
Oh, don't give up.
Mm.
Don't. Like, you have no option. Giving up is not the option.
It's not an option.
No, it is not an option. So don't even put it there on the list. Just simply don't give up.
Okay.
Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for staying through. This was a lovely episode. We'll see you on the next one.